Hey, what's up, guys? It's Trevor again with Grain Free Me, and today we're going to be working on my chaffle recipes. I'm going to be doing start off here with blueberries, do some apple cinnamon, and then also just my basic bread and bun chaffle, which is great for sandwiches and hamburger buns. And I was just kind of screwing around today because I haven't done a lot of this by hand. Like I said in my pizza crust recipe, that it's a learning process. I've worked on all these recipes taste-wise and stuff for the last 3 years. And this really is an awesome replacement for bread and buns. And it's so nice to be able to eat cheeseburgers and deli sandwiches. Finally, it took a while to get here, and I've tried, all together between the pizza crust, the chaffle recipes, and my tortilla and deli wrap recipes. I've hundreds of recipes online, and just going through each one, and most of them, 99%, look great on YouTube, but they're horrible when it comes to flavor and consistency. So I've tried really hard to get this mix, all of my mixes, consistent. And one thing you'll notice right there, if you look, the yolks are different sizes, so you're always going to have a little bit of discrepancy, but for the most part, I've really got this nailed down over the last couple of years. And I like using about half and half liquid egg whites to, so this is 8 eggs and 8 egg whites. I threw what was left, very little left in the bottom of the box. And then that's about half a cup of water there. Being that we're using dehydrated blueberries and later in the apple cinnamon, you really have to kind of play around with it. This is a great start, but depending on how dry your apples are, how dry your blueberries are, you're going to be adding a little bit of water, whether that's extra half a cup. I usually let things sit in the fridge and rehydrate the apples and blueberries a bit. And so once that rehydrates, you might have to add an extra half a cup of water. You might have to add an extra cup of water. It changes, if you just slap them right into the dash, then there's a picture right there. I've got an 8-tray dehydrator that I do my blueberries and apples. It's a 2-pound bag of blueberries dehydrated overnight, and it's usually a 3 to 5 pound bag of apples. I use Granny Smith because they give a nice bite, and then I'll do a video on that down the road on how I do the dehydrating. So mix everything up here, and all of this is on my webpage, grainfreeme.com. And once you start getting the cheese in, it gets a little thicker, so grab a spatula and just mix it together. I was really going for, growing up, we used to have the Jiffy mix, blueberry muffin mix. I loved that as a kid growing up. And everything I've tried just didn't work out the right way. Didn't taste right. And I tried using fresh blueberries. That did not work at all. They really have to be dehydrated and then let them sit for a little bit to rehydrate to get that kind of blueberry muffin flavor that I was looking for growing up with. So here we're gonna get the dash plugged in, and I use it for the multi dash, but I'll show you in a second here when we start portioning things out. That's a number 20 scoop. I buy a 3-pack because I use comes in a small, medium, and large on Amazon. And when I do my tortillas and deli wraps, it gives me 3 different sizes of tortilla. But for this, most recipes call for a 1/4 cup. This is actually a number 20, is technically 3 tablespoons, but it works perfect for the chaffles. And I usually just use the back 2, and I'll show you here in a second. We're going to go 4 minutes. 4 minutes is usually the perfect time. You might have to change that extra 30 seconds depending on how much water you added to your mix, but we'll see here. 4 minutes. That's a pretty perfect chaffle right there. And now we're going to go ahead and do all 4, and I'll show you why I don't do all 4 in these. Might work great for doing standard waffle batter, but you can see the lid lifted up a little bit there, and that's the problem. Those back 2 push it up, does not cook the front 2. And I've tried cooking on the front 2 instead of the back 2. I really like the way the back 2 cooks versus just doing the front 2. So I've got 2 that I use, so that way I can do 4 at a time, which really speeds up my food prep. I can knock out, each batch of this will generally make 24 to 32 chaffles. So I've actually got my other dash in the other room, and kind of bouncing between the 2. And once I get a full tray, I put that in, I let it sit for 5-10 minutes, and then I put it in the freezer. And that way they get nice and firm. So when I go to vacuum seal them, they don't crush and squish and turn into just, pancakes basically. And here's the apple cinnamon that we're doing. Basically, it's the same recipe. You are going to need to add more water to this because the apples do pull a lot of the moisture back in, and you need to let it sit for a half hour, 45 minutes, because if you just go straight from mixing onto the chaffle maker, the apples don't rehydrate, and they're going to be kind of hard, so you'll have basically apple pebbles instead of apple chunks. And here's another thing I like doing. I like pre-mixing or pre-measuring my eggs and putting them in a deli container. And with that, this time when I do my apple cinnamon ones, I usually do 6 whole eggs and 10 egg whites, and start off with a 1/4 cup of water and get that all mixed up together. Scrape down the sides, and this is a pretty good amount of apples here. So we're gonna need a little bit bigger utensil than a whisk for this. I like using a wooden spoon, and I could have actually, probably would have been smarter to just add the water right now, but you know, it's still a learning process. I'm still tweaking these recipes every time I try them, and it's so different doing it by hand versus a big stand mixer. So we're going to get that finished mixed up, and then it'll go in the fridge for 45 minutes or so. And I try to do all of these at the same time, so that way I can put what's cooked in the freezer, have one sitting. When I start cooking the next one, I will mix up my next batch. So here's just my straight up bread and bun chaffle. 8 eggs, 8 egg whites, half a cup of water. And today I just decided, I'm like, I'll add a little bit extra. So that's pretty good right there. And this one is super simple. This is my preferred method, using a stand mixer. The eggs, the water, right in the stand mixer. And start off on number 1, let that spin for a little bit. I'm adding an extra quarter cup right there. And then turn it up to 4 or 5, slow it down, add the packet of my bread and bun chaffle mix, get that going, turn it back up to 5 or 6, then back down to 1, dump in the cheese. And the thing I like about using the whisk on the stand mixer for the bread and bun chaffles is it kind of beats up the cheese. So you get a very nice consistency. And it's, by the time you let it sit in the fridge for about 15 minutes, it lets the ingredients kind of absorb some of the moisture, so you can scoop it. And it scoops really easy instead of being, runny. And here's my basic setup. 2 chaffle makers. I've got my pans with racks. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.